Welcome to Your Cyber Path, the podcast that helps you get your dream cybersecurity job by sharing the secrets of experienced hiring managers and top cybersecurity professionals with you. Now, on to the show.
And that's where this comes into. And when we talk about defense in depth, we're talking about layering your defenses, right? So if I have a laptop, that laptop needs to have antivirus and anti-malware. It needs to have a software-based firewall on the system. But when I connect it to my network should also have a router with ACLs, and it should have a firewall, an intrusion detection system, an intrusion prevention system, and all those things that layer on top. And the whole idea is, you've probably all seen this picture of Swiss cheese. If I take a block of Swiss cheese and I cut it up and there's like a bunch of different slices of cheese and I put 4 or 5 together, will I be able to see through that? Well, it depends on how those Swiss cheese line up. And if all the holes line up, the bad guy can get in, right? And that's what we're trying to prevent. So by doing defense in depth, maybe they get past the firewall, but they can't get past the IDS. Or maybe they get past the IDS, but they can't get past the malware, anti-malware solution, right? All of these things add additional things. And in the old days, we had that, really strong perimeter and really gushy inside of our networks. These days, because of deperimeterization, everybody has devices all over the place. We have to have a lot more defense in depth on each individual asset as well as the network as a whole. And so that's why I say these are kind of best practices. The only side caveat I'd have to that, we say, is it a law necessarily, is that, well, it's not a law. You can still be legally held liable for not applying these best practices. And this actually goes back to an old court case. You want to talk about old things? We're talking 1975 principles here. When I'm talking court case, I'm talking about 1930s court case. Okay. There was a court case when radio first came out. And there was a boat that had $1 million worth of cargo going down the Mississippi River. They didn't have a radio on board. Storm came out of nowhere, hit them. They went aground. They lost the cargo. The owner of the cargo sued the shipping company and said, hey, you lost my cargo. I want my $1 million. And the shipping company goes, no, not our problem. Act of God. We couldn't control it. Well, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, well, actually, no. You were not using things that everybody else was using, like a radio. If you had a radio, they could have told you there was bad weather, don't go upriver, stay in port today, and you wouldn't have lost the cargo. So because you weren't using the technology that was now considered commonplace and readily available, you are now going to be liable for it. And the same holds true in our organizations. If we don't do basic things like encryption at rest, encryption at transit, we don't do things like making sure that we have a firewall in place, you can be held liable for not having those things in place if you have a data breach. And so now your company's going to be on the hook of it because of that court case. And that court case was called the TJ Hooper, I believe was the name of the boat, versus whatever that was the name of the boat and the shipping company versus the company that owned it. It was like the East American Trading Company or something like that. But you can look up that court case. And it's pretty interesting that, this old court case from 1932, 1933 still affects us in the cybersecurity world today. And it doesn't mean that you have to use the latest and greatest technology. But once something becomes commonly used as a best practice in your industry, if you're not following it, you can be held liable. And so that is where that principle comes back to haunt you as a rule or a law that could be regulatory consequences.